Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, I didn't know anything about the last airbender. Then, everything changed when my best friend said, let's do a podcast. We could call it Avatar State Radio. 6,953 days had passed before I discovered Avatar, not the Blue Cats, but a 19-year-old cartoon. Like Aang, I have a lot to learn, but I believe I'll love Avatar The Last Airbender. Welcome to this week's edition of Avatar State Radio. I am the last podbender, Kevin Gallagher, joined by
Mike D'Angelo. I know everything Avatar, everywhere, all at once.
I might be the last podbender, but you are the Pavatar.
I like it.
That's me buying time to pull up my notes.
Well, we can kind of riff until we get there if you want, because we are talking about episode 15, Bato of the Water Tribe.
Yes, which I was expecting like a huge jump in the story, being that like, oh, maybe this is like from like the Northern Water Tribe, which clearly is not the case once you get approximately 45 seconds into the episode.
Right. Yeah. You know, very quickly, hey, this is stuff that looks like it was people from our tribe. And then once you meet Bato, everything is made very clear.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll say it's very cool, like seeing, because I guess we haven't really seen a water tribe's like weaponry up close before. Or at least not. I mean, Aang really like literally goes, oh, cool. Look, this is like a whale's tooth as a sword.
Yeah, I mean, and it is kind of interesting. Like we only briefly spent any time at the Southern Water Tribe, and even back then, you weren't really spending a lot of time with like their warriors or anything like that. Sokka was pretty much their only real warrior. We've seen his weapon or his weapon set that he uses, but we really didn't dive too far into the kind of things that he uses.
Right. And like it was a bunch of kids that were defending that village, which is a whole nother. I think we went on a tirade about that. But right. I feel like seeing Sokka fight, like it's never stood out to me as like, oh, these are like cool swords. They just seem like normal blades.
Yeah. And then you get kind of like a more like one with the land kind of feel to it. And it's very funny. Like we always jump around, but Aang ended up, you know, kind of poo-pooing the idea of like the prune sea plums and stuff like that, or boiled sea plums or whatever they were. And it's kind of like you would imagine that he would be okay with that based on like his palate anyway.
Right. I mean, he walks right into Bato's hut, which is, as Sokka and Katara walk in, they're like, oh my God, this feels like home. And Aang says something about, oh yeah, there's nothing like a bunch of dead animal skins.
Right. It felt like almost like a conflict was ready to break out from the very beginning of this episode. And I mean, like to some extent you get it because Katara and Sokka were kind of icing him out unintentionally. But yeah, it very much was like, you know what these people are like. It's not like they're doing it for sport or anything like that. Like they're very respectful of everything that's going on.
Right. It feels like most of the like kingdoms and tribes and whatnot are very much that way. Like they're only killing what they need to kill and using everything from that kill.
Yeah, I would assume maybe to some extent, maybe the Fire Tribe, because we've seen they don't really have that kind of respect for the world. Maybe they're a little bit more destructive. Right. But the other ones kind of feel like they're more in balance, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And we get like a very, very brief Sokka flashback, which turns into, you know, we get like more moments that throughout the episode, which is I think the first time we've really seen a flashback from Sokka's point of view. And then he instantly, like all of a sudden, Sokka's like a master tracker and like describes what's happened where they found this sword and tracks the battle where it sounds like the water tribe had the upper hand down to the lake or the river or whatever, where they find ultimately a boat from their parents' fleet.
Well, dad, because mom is dead at this point.
Oh yes, dad is what I meant to say, not moms.
So yeah, I mean, you very much like get a sense from the very beginning of this episode that it's kind of like a Sokka centric episode, because they are letting him shine. You know, like we've seen plenty of times where he's just he bungles everything, and in this episode he doesn't do that as much. He's got a lot of opportunities to show off his knowledge, to show off his leadership skills, and those kind of things, and just throughout the episode, we get to see that. And he gets to impress Bato, who hopefully will be able to bring that information back to Papa and tell him what a good job Sokka's been doing, and also what Korra's been doing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Katara.
This is definitely a Sokka and a little bit of a Katara episode. And you know, very much as soon as Bato arrives, Aang almost instantly starts to feel like he doesn't belong. Iced out, as you said.
Yeah.
Because they're just like having a great time, like telling stories around what I would call a very dangerous campfire in a hut.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It was, I can't even really talk about how, like, they're just doing things kind of strange that I wouldn't do.
Well, and they also left like the fire by the boat when Bato first came and got them, and they all of them, including Appa and Momo, leave. There's still the fire burning by the boat, which looked very close to the boat.
Right. And the funny thing is, like, the next episode, again, we're jumping forward a little bit. They talk very much about how, like, fire is a destructive force, you have to control it, kind of things. So I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just by happenstance that they happen to, the episode before, show elements like that where maybe you're not doing as good a job as you should.
Yeah, I don't know. It is a very odd coincidence for it to happen in these two episodes, which you'll learn more about, folks, next week.
Next week. So very early on, we kind of see the darkest side of Aang, I think, that we've seen throughout the series, when he meets up with the messenger, who again is voiced by Scott Menville, who we talked about last week, was or the week before, whichever one, was one of those characters from Dark Cloud 2. Takes the message, balls it up, and has no intention of giving it to Bato or Sokka and Katara.
Yeah, my note for that is, for shame, Aang. And that becomes a like plot point throughout the episode, where like everything that involves Aang and the things that they're doing with Bato is trust. And he instantly is he's regretting this decision that he's made.
You can see the guilt and the shame in him right away.
And I think we're skipping around this episode, but that what did they call it? It was a ice. God, I have it written down somewhere here. Ice dodging.
Yeah. When they're doing the ice dodging, but they're using like the crags out in the water.
Right. Which was a very cool scene, and even more so than in the beginning, where Sokka is like very competent in the beginning of the episode. Sokka is like real for someone who we've obviously, he knows how to sail a ship because we've seen him, operate a boat. We've in the very early of this season. He's obviously as one of the oldest males in his tribe before he left, someone had to know how to sail to fish and stuff. So he's had to be very capable going into this, but he proves that even more with dodging the rocks, like left, right, like telling Aang and Katara what to do, even though like Aang doesn't really know what the hell he's talking about.
Right, yeah, he's never experienced ice dodging or probably talked about it before.
Right.
And they take it a step further, because I would assume that nobody in this generation of the Water Tribe has ever done something like Sokka's done, because nobody's ever been able to say, hey, I've got an airbender on my ship that can really kind of lighten the load, lift the ship up, and then have a waterbender, take us right over the rocks.
Right. Which was like right, at that point, Bato was like, "Yo, Sokka, you proved yourself. You're like, let's not," and like just like instantly in charge. It was a very one of the like 2 or 3 very cool scenes that happened in this episode.
Yeah.
And I'd honestly say like maybe even like a top 5 scene for the series thus
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. This episode, strangely, is one of the ones that's sub 8. And I really thought that, like, we've only talked about the Aang stuff so far. And they've got an entire Zuko subplot that leads into the 2 plots connecting.
Right.
So I'm surprised as anything that it's only a 7.7.
Which is crazy to me because this is, I mean, better than I think the previous 2 episodes that we've talked about.
Right.
And the Great Divide, which I think was like what, a sub 7. So it was
sub
like
7,
6.
Yeah, it was the only sub 7 of the series.
Right. So, but like this is definitely, for me it ranks up there. It's a pretty good episode. And you're right, like we haven't even got like there's a whole, and I was literally calling this person bounty hunter throughout my notes because I didn't realize that she had a name until the very end when Iroh mentions it.
Yeah,
but
June.
Yeah, June. And near the early parts of the episode, we have, and I don't know, what was this animal called that she was on?
I believe they called it a shirshu.
So this shirshu, which is like part wolf, part anteater.
I want to say it was part wolf, part like almost like a badger.
Maybe, yeah.
Like badgers, certain badgers have that weird like splayed face. But I don't know that they have like a whip tongue like that.
Right. Or like the sense of smell, like is their vision. Like
right.
It was a very unique animal, but cool animal. And June is riding this animal, attacks Zuko's ship. And like Zuko, this like looks bad for him. Like, how does he not know that there's this guy hiding out on his ship?
Right. And they don't really hint like to that. They just kind of gloss over it, but it is really bad that, I guess he was an Earth Nation person. Yeah. And that kind of plot point kind of dies out because I guess she's already got what she needs.
Yeah, I mean, we never hear of like how did the stowaway get on the ship again, and it's a kid show, I guess. Let's move it along. But then he ultimately tracks her down at whatever village, and then is basically hiring her because of damaging his ship. Right. In which he said, we'll be even once you find the avatar for me. And that's not good enough for her. Iroh is fantastic in this episode. Goes without saying. He's fantastic in every episode. He clearly has some sort of little crush, I think, on June.
Yeah, definitely smitten by her. Throughout the episode, he's doing like little things to like spruce himself up for her. And things like that. We did briefly pass over when they're at the bar and she's arm wrestling these people and winning. Yes. The one that she's fighting looks suspiciously like Ryu from Street Fighter.
I thought the same thing. I thought the same exact thing. So funny. And I feel like that if that's not in your trivia as like, oh yeah, this was definitely a nod.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like wild. But what a cool like little way that they visualized the whatever wolf thing,
the shirshu, the way that it tracks things down.
Yeah, the way they visualized how that thing tracks was very cool. A very cool way. And like maybe not at first, like when it's just like, okay, like these scents have different colors, and obviously like these colors all mean something different. And oh, we're zeroing in on purple, which is for Katara, and it's cool. But what I think really like sold me on that was when they finally catch up with them. Which again, I'm jumping over like two very cool points that
Right.
happened.
Right. And I know what you're talking about.
But when it zeroes in on Katara is just purple, matching the scent that the thing was following.
Right. Yeah. It kind of like does like a passover of her in
Yeah.
that color to kind of denote that the target has been found.
Yeah, and that was such a I think a very cool way to visualize that um ability or whatever you want to not it's just its natural way of living, that sense that
Right.
the animal has. It was a very, very cool thing. Almost immediately after my note about for Shaymang, when he takes that map and crumples it up and hides it in his tunic, um, almost immediately after that, we see Medicine Cat Lady, which I thought was awesome.
And did you notice that there's a little bit of a goof there as well?
I did not, I don't think.
So they go to Medicine Lady, and why would they go to Medicine Lady for for what you know?
Oh, wait. Yeah, because Katara wasn't there.
Right. So it was a cool way to kind of loop in what happened in the following or in the previous few episodes, but she was never there. Like you could maybe say like maybe it caught a faint scent that was on Aang when he went to visit, but or maybe
And,
something happened off screen,
right.
but
Or
um
or was she in her little shop? Maybe she was somewhere else where Katara actually was.
I think that she was in the shop. But I
Doesn't
don't know for sure.
doesn't matter. The little kitty was there, and that was awesome. And I
Right.
thought that was a great way, like you said, to kind of rope in a previous episode.
Yeah, and then same thing with the fortune teller as well.
Yeah, and I thought for sure because Aunt Wu, like, now I think she did it as a fortune teller, like she was just flirting with Iroh to flirt and try to get a customer. But I was really hoping for some magic between Iroh and Aunt Wu right there.
Yeah, I mean, you figure they're a little bit more age appropriate than Iroh and June.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't even really notice like Iroh's like flirtatious behavior with June until like the very end.
Right.
So I don't think I don't know that he was flirting.
He
I
might,
just
he might not
really
have been
like
as forward about it
right.
until later, but like even right from the get go, he was like all smiles.
It's true. It's true. But I was very much team like Iru, I guess. That's the name I'll give it.
Irune.
But yeah. That was another cool one. And then kind of getting back to the ice dodging and where everything kind of comes to a head with Aang hiding that map. Bato gives marks to all three kids because like they all did a really good job during this dodging exercise. Sokka's Mark of the Wise, Katara's Mark of the Brave, and Aang is Mark of the Trusted.
And made an honorary member of the Water Tribe.
Yes, and made an honorary member of the Water Tribe, which was, I would argue he kind of feels like that already because of the relationship he has with Sokka and Katara for the last 15 episodes, 14 and a half episodes at this point.
Right. But I guess like it is kind of it would have been nice for it to have been official without like any other pretenses about, hey, I screwed up. And then immediately afterwards, the guilt eats him up too much and he has to confess about what he did.
Right. And something that like we kind of glossed over when they were in that little hut in like early on in the episode, Aang runs away and that's when he meets the messenger. But when he runs away, he doesn't hear. And it's Sokka that takes the lead multiple times here when it comes to, we have a job to get Aang to the North Pole. And
right. Yeah. Earlier in the conversation in the hut, and then later when they've kind of turned their shoulders, away from him to say like, we're leaving you. Katara is the one who follows through and she's like, yeah, I get it. Like, we really can't trust this kid anymore, which is a little bit much. But then later, Sokka is the one who turns around and says, like, "Look, we're his tribe, basically."
Yeah. I mean, he Bato tells this like wolf story as they're walking, following the map to meet their father, and that's what kind of like there's like another little flashback here, I believe, and Sokka, makes that tough call of like, hey, I want to see my dad, I really do, but like we have a responsibility to get the Avatar here, and it's not until the end of the episode where like he just says like, Aang, you're our family too.
Right.
Um, but then like as they're separated, and then even after when Sokka and Katara leave Bato, is when finally the June, Zuko, and Iroh finds Katara and Sokka.
Yeah, the two plot lines finally kind of intersect.
Yeah, and then Aang's not there, and Sokka's like telling the truth, even though one would assume that he's just trying to protect Aang, which I mean he was doing both. He was telling the truth and protecting Aang. But what we don't see is, what happened. Oh, so no, what happens after that is the scent of Aang gets picked up, and
we got some blue.
Sokka and Katara are what it paralyzed from that tongue of the wolf thing, and they go back to the whatchamacallit, the
they go
temple?
Back to the town.
The temple, the town, whatever it might be, and then it's Aang to the rescue, and then Appa to the rescue.
So let me just break in there for a second. Would we describe that as an opportunity attack?
Oh, but I'm a bum. Like it.
Yeah, probably one of the best action sequences in the entire series thus far, with this big, battle that's happening between, Zuko, June, the shirshu, and then Team Avatar.
Which is saying something, because there's been so many battles that really have happened, and so many fight scenes that have happened that have all been really excellent. But this one was really cool because we really, Appa's involved more than he's ever been, and that was like such a cool scene where he's he spears that wolf thing.
They got the spear, they got the headbutt. Like Appa really did a good job, and then Aang had a great opportunity to do some 1v1 with Zuko too, and I think that it's been the best. It's the best like duel that we've seen the entire series as well.
And like they're like that first interaction they have where like Zuko's blasting fire and Aang's blasting air, and like it just combusts in this big explosion, and they go flying opposite directions onto the roof and crash. What a cool scene.
Yeah. And there's just a whole bunch of other mess going on, because obviously, like, if it's just Aang by himself, and with Appa for a while as well until he's paralyzed, the nuns from the town are able to break Sokka and Katara out of their funk and get them unparalyzed with the smelling salts, basically. And then they end up going to use the perfume as a means to distract the shirshu.
And my note for that is perfume bending.
Oh, I call it stink bending, Kev.
But that, again, a very cool visual sense of like overloading this wolf's senses, and to the point where he's going crazy, and he ends up, tongue lashing Zuko and June. They go down. Iroh, who has not been, I don't think he really fought at all.
No, because during the fight, he was looking at like the perfume and like dabbing it on himself and stuff, because he was trying to up his Riz game.
and you see him go after June. Not after Zuko. He's like, June, that's when I learned her name. I didn't hear her
Yeah.
name once before this.
And it was like a desperate cry too. Like, oh, you're so important to me.
And my favorite line from from this episode is, Uncle, I didn't see you get hit with the tongue. Shh.
Right, because even though like the people are paralyzed, they're still aware. They don't
Yeah.
go into a coma or anything. So immediately June's like, "Hey, wait a minute."
Yeah, and it's just so the funniest line of the episode, and then it wraps up with them flying away on Appa. Aang reveals that he, during this whole thing, Aang's mission is to get this with his one-on-one with Zuko is to get that necklace back, and he succeeds, and he's like, it's a cute little scene between Katang, and that ends with a little smooch on the cheek that makes Aang blush, and just a very cute way to end the episode.
Right.
But overall, I mean, I really enjoyed this one. The fact that you said it's a 7.7.
Yeah, I feel like that's super low.
That feels low for like. There's other episodes that we've watched recently that you mentioned were a 7.7, and I feel like this was probably better than that.
Yeah. And I mean, like to some extent, like it really like it doesn't move the bar still. Like a lot of season 1 was just kind of like what trouble can the gang get into before they're in the Northern Water Tribe. So like you kind of get the sense this deep into the series that like this is just kind of the normal appearance. Like maybe we'll get there soon. The season's called Water, so I assume that we'll get there by the end. But it's not like it doesn't hit you out of the blue that this stuff keeps happening. And it is still nice because you get to see Bato, you get to see the growth that Sokka has had, and then you get arguably at this point the coolest action sequence that you've had in the series thus far.
So I'm peeling the curtains back a little bit just for a second, because as you were talking, my dog started barking, and I muted it so that I could like tell him to stop. My favorite part now is that I'm going to have to edit that out because I don't think you heard me scream Hades.
Oh, no, I didn't.
But it got picked up on Mike.
That's funny. I did not hear it at all.
Anyway, great episode. Agree with all your points. I did pay attention. They just are aloof for me right now.
So let's hit trivia. So June was same thing as like how last episode or 2 episodes ago, whenever it was, when we were talking about the calm man being inspired by somebody. June is based on one of Avatar's post-production managers, Lisa Yang, and Nyla, the shirshu, which I guess did have a name, but I don't remember picking it up during the episode. But Nyla is based on Yang's Rottweiler.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the characters, Bato, is voiced by one of my favorite voice actors from my modern favorite series. You'll know that like Final Fantasy VI is like one of my all-time favorite games, but if you go a little bit more modern, my favorite series is the Uncharted series, right. And he voices Victor Sullivan, who is like if not the second main lead, like the third main lead in the entire series.
His voice is familiar and not necessarily from Uncharted for me because I don't.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly been in some other things. Let me see if I can dig up things really quick. I mentioned Scott Menville already, and we also have Jennifer Hale, who voices Jean Grey and Madeline and X-Men 97 and things like that. The Bato voice actor, his name is Richard McGonigal. He's done a bunch of stuff. He does a decent amount of voice work, especially on like cartoons and stuff. In the Batman Telltale series, he voiced Carmine Falcone.
That's probably where I know his voice from.
Yeah. He was Mr. Incredible, at least in some off stuff. I don't know if he was the actual Mr. Incredible.
No, I think actual Mr. Incredible was Coach from that TV show
Craig
called
T.
Coach.
Nelson.
Yeah, Craig T. Nelson.
Craig T. Nelson is he's enjoying a resurgence because of Young Sheldon as well.
What we're going down the rabbit hole now.
Anyway, yeah. So we got a decent amount of additional voice actresses in this episode because Jennifer Hale lent her voice to June.
This one was a good, like, I'm guessing people felt like it was a filler episode, but it did push the story along. Like, we learn more about, Sokka and Katara and the Water Tribe and their dad specifically.
Yeah, there was an ethos to this episode that we really enjoyed, I think. And it'll be fun to kind of balance that against next week's episode because we'll talk about that soon too,
Yes.
and we'll be able to make comparisons.
Yes. Well, do you have any more trivia?
Nope, we are all wrapped up.
All right, in that case, it's time to start flicking these lights off and telling people that we got to get out of here over the old loudspeaker. So make sure you follow us on avatarstateradio.com. There you can listen to episodes of the show. We have contact information on where you can reach both Mike and I. But we'll let you know right here and right now that you can find me on most social media at ThatNerdyKev or ThatNerdyKev.com. I stopped talking about Everything is Awesome for some reason. I also host another podcast called Everything is Awesome, which you can find on your favorite podcast platforms or awesomepodcast.com. Mike, where can they find you?
So you can find me at tellus.com, and that'll usually take you to a bunch of other places. But if you want to get some of our premium stuff, you can find me at patreon.com/tellus, or you can go to tellus.etsy.com to find a lot of cool things like mouse pads, one-of-a-kind magic wands, and just cool art. Just lots of cool stuff.
And with that, the Pavatar and the last Podbender are flipping the lights off here at Avatar State Radio Studios and saying good night. Thank you for listening to Avatar State Radio right here on avatarstateradio.com.
Woo.